All right, so this is being recorded and we will post it on the university site, so you can go back and review it anytime you wish, or if you miss this one or future live chat webinars, they will be recorded. We will also do updates periodically over the course of the year. Depends on the number of new students that join the program over the course of the year, as well as the number of questions I receive on an ongoing basis. If I get lots of questions and I feel it's worth having a live webinar, then I'll just set up a live chat for everybody to attend and benefit from those questions as well. All right, so we are going to do screen sharing. All right, I'll have to, oh yeah, no, it's already going. You're right, thank you. And then we'll do this and hit play. So again, we'll be back as soon as this recording is finished playing. Here we go with Module 1 review, where we are going to review all 6 lessons that have been recorded, pre-recorded for you. So just as a reminder, this is not to replace those lessons. This is just a quick overview so that it will help refresh the different lessons for you, so that you can ask, this is your chance to ask questions at the end of our quick review. So we'll get started here, and here we go. Alright, so just as a reminder, Module 1 was, the focus was what, where, and how. In Lesson 1 we were looking at what style of properties we should be looking for. In Lesson 2 then we talked about where we should be buying these types of properties. Lesson number 3, how to buy the properties, and that was a bit about the negotiating and writing the offers. Lesson 4 then we talked about the psychology of winning, and we really focused on your personal why. Lesson 5 we talked about creating your team to help you achieve your goals, and then we wrapped up the first module with Lesson 6 talking about your massive action plan. So in Lesson 1, we went through all the different styles of properties that are available to us out there, and it's determined that the high ranch style of property is best suited for the 5 Homes program. Doesn't mean that other houses won't work, it's just that this style of house is absolutely the best style for you to be looking at, simply because it's got the largest footprint, meaning that it's got the largest amount of living space available to you on each separate floor. And the basement has the extra high ceiling. It's not dug down into the ground as deep as the old bungalows. Therefore, you've got larger windows, which makes it great for safety, for egress in the event of an emergency. But also, it provides much more light, and it really doesn't feel like it's a basement unit. The other big advantage of this style of house is the front entrance. It looks like a single door entry, which it is, but when you go into a landing, you then have the option of going up half a flight of stairs or down half a flight of stairs, and at that point you can create separate some separation between the 2 units so that you can walk through the front door and then each have a secured entry into the other area. So that's the style of property that has been determined to be the best for this 5 Homes to Freedom model. We then looked at the price range of the houses, and the price range is also dependent on the rents that you can get. So when you factor everything in, you're pretty well looking at the middle income individual, and what they can afford and expect to live in is going to be a house in the price point of $250,000 to $400,000. Now, of course, this is going to vary from city to city. The bigger markets like Toronto, Vancouver, and down in the US markets like New York or LA, you're obviously going to have much higher price points, and this program may or may not work with those high price points. It may work simply because with the higher value of houses, you also have the higher rents. So it's all relative. But on average, we're looking at the price point of $250,000 to $400,000. With that price point, you can expect to achieve this type of cash flow, and again, depends on the market conditions. When you look at a market up in northern Alberta, Fort McMurray area, where housing is premium, the rents up there are going to be 2-3 times what you see here in this example, but the price point is going to be twice as high as well. So again, it is all relative. What you're looking for, though, is to net out cash flow in the $650 price point, in that range. Next, we talked about where you should be actually buying, what city or neighborhoods, and we looked at all the different income levels and determined that the middle income bracket, again, is the market that you should be looking at for a variety of reasons, but that is the price point that's the most affordable, the most attractive. It's also the price point with the most number of homes available as well. So it just makes sense to stay focused on that bracket. You also want to look in neighborhoods with features that highlight low crime rates. You want lots of parks and schools close by for the families, and you want shopping that's easy to access for people without cars, or who are without cars, or relying on the public transit. Speaking of public transit, you also need to keep that in mind, that a lot of cases, seniors, they're downsizing, they're getting rid of their cars and whatnot, or maybe new young couples just starting out, they may not have vehicles and they rely on transit. So you want to make sure that there is good public transit to support the property where you're going to be buying. These are just some of the features that you're going to be looking at. Now, I get a lot of people always asking, why should I worry so much about where to buy? Well, if you focus on the good markets to buy in, what's going to happen is you're going to reduce the vacancies and or the turnovers, because it's going to be popular to your tenants. You're going to be attracting better quality tenants as well, people who have good income jobs, solid jobs. So you're going to be able to charge premium rents because it's a desirable area to live in. You'll be able to maximize the appreciation. If the market's going to go up on its own, having the property located in a premium neighborhood, those areas will appreciate more than less desirable neighborhoods. It's also going to allow for a much more ease of management, because you're going to have good quality tenants who want to live there a long time. The affordability as well, so you're looking at the middle income bracket, and affordability compared to the rents that you can charge, and it just maximizes the profitability of the entire property, because you're actually drawing from all of the different profit centers in that particular house. So you're gaining from the appreciation, which will help you with refinancing the property in the future or selling the property in the future. It helps you with the cash flow. It's just going to be able to charge those premium rents. Instant equity, if you're able to get a good deal on the property in a really good neighborhood. Principal reduction, depreciation, those are standard. So you just need to understand where the profit comes from to understand where you can get the biggest bang for your buck. Then in lesson 3, we moved on to how to actually buy the property, identifying the 5 steps. And so first, you're going to be identifying the market you want to invest in, which touched on that in the earlier lessons. Then researching your market for the property values, so you know when a property comes on the market, you can act quickly because you know whether the property truly is what they're asking or not. So research that ahead of time. Also research your market for the renters that you want. Are you going to be targeting seniors? Are you going to be targeting young professionals getting into the home ownership market? That will dictate the types of neighborhoods you want to be investing in as well. So then we talked about, or will talk about, actually building your team, which includes your property management, your real estate agent, inspectors, handy person. That's coming up in the next lesson. And then start to make the actual offers themselves. So when you start to make the offers, you need to work with a real estate agent. And working with a real estate agent is going to show you the amount of paperwork that is involved. Now, if you don't work with a real estate agent and you just do a deal privately, you definitely will deal with a lot less paperwork. However, there's a lot of potential risk that you take on when you do not work with a real estate agent, because you're not having full transparency between buyer and seller. The seller may not be telling the full truth, and you've got no protection there. You've got no representation to help guide you through the process to help you decide whether that's a good deal or not. So it's definitely worth your while to work with a real estate agent. And the paperwork that the agent has to fill out is very extensive as well. So be patient with them. It's not something the real estate agents like, but they have to complete all this paperwork. It's the rules that they have to follow. Then we talked about the representation with respect to a real estate agent, who's the agent representing, dual representation, how that all works, and what you should actually expect from your agent, and equally what you should not expect from your agent. So a lot of people have the mindset or belief that simply because the real estate agent has a real estate license and they're licensed to sell real estate, that makes them an expert. It can make them an expert in filling out the paperwork, in marketing, sales of homes, etc., but it does not make them an expert in all fields, especially in the field of investing. So don't expect your real estate agent to be very knowledgeable with respect to anything creative. What you should expect, though, is honesty and complete representation and knowledge, complete knowledge of the market that you're looking to be investing in as well. Then when you actually get to writing the offer, this sort of really challenges a lot of people and a lot of agents as well. You know, do you actually visit the property first or not? Over the past year, I've been working with a student who has missed 3 deals because he wants to go see the property first. And as a result of that time that it takes for him to arrange the visit to the property, actually go to the property, assess whether it's of any interest or not, somebody else has made the offers and bought the property out from under them. So this is something that takes a little bit of getting used to, and when you write the offer, you just simply write in there, one of your clauses is going to be subject to viewing of the property within 3 days after acceptance of the offer. And for any reason that you do not like the property, you can get out of the contract at that point in time. Then we talked about what price do you offer. A lot of investors want to get the absolute best deal, and I understand that. I want to get good deals as well. But you always have to leave, well, you don't have to, but I suggest you leave something on the table for the other person as well. Make it a win-win for both sides. Because you never know what that other person has to sell in the future or when you'll be dealing with them ever again in the future. But the bottom line here is with this program, you don't have to steal properties. You don't have to get really smoking hot deals. Is it better if you can? Sure it is. But the program is designed to work with you paying fair market value for the properties. So just be fair out there. Typically, depends on the market conditions. Right now where I'm living, we're in slightly a buyer's market, meaning that there's more properties on the market than there are buyers out there. So there's quite a selection for the buyers. So the buyers feel they don't have to pay full price. And they're coming in at they're selling anywhere between 95, 98% of the asking price. And their initial offers are anywhere between 90 to 95%. When you are in a different market and it's a seller's market, then sometimes you may have to go in at even above asking price in order to get that property. Actually, just this past week, one of our students had to go in. There was multiple offers on a raised ranch. They're in the program. They wanted the house. They felt it was priced right. Even if they had to pay full price for it, they felt it was a good deal. And I suggested that they go in at $5,000 above asking, and as a result, they did get their offer accepted because they went in above asking price. So it all depends on the market, depends on the ability of the agent to guide you through that process as well. How much is your deposit? The deposit legally can be as little as $1. However, nobody in their right mind is going to accept $1. And again, a lot of investors who have been taught by the big American-based companies have been taught to put as little down as possible. If they can put $100 down and get away with that, that's great. The challenge with putting down small deposits, anything under $1,000, the challenge with that is the seller and the seller's agent is not going to look at you with any level of, not respect, but they're not going to take you serious. So you don't want to rock the boat right off the get-go. I mean, you could go in with a single family house, $1,000 would be the bare minimum. You can expect to put down or have to be asked to put down as much as $5,000. So you might want to put $1,000, $2,000 down, and if they come back with a $5,000 deposit, the way you can get around that is say, no, I'll give you $2,000 now and I'll give you an additional $3,000 upon removing of conditions. Because at that point in time, you're actually going to be buying the property anyhow. Then we get into, we talked about the terms and conditions, and for every purchase and sale, you should always have a conditional upon financing and inspection at the bare minimum. And these two conditions should be subject to your approval. And this is how, if for whatever reason you don't like the financing terms or you don't like the condition of the property, then you can get out of the contract. You can also add in many other conditions depending on what the condition of the property is or the circumstances surrounding it. So once you've got the offer accepted, now what do you do? Well, you've got your week to 2 weeks to do your due diligence, which means fulfilling your conditions, trying to get the financing, making sure you can get insurance, running it past your lawyer to make sure everything's good, doing the inspection to make sure the property's in good condition. Before you remove the conditions to accept that property, you may or may not want to renegotiate. The key here is that if there's no major issues with the property and or these major issues have been identified before you actually made the offer, then there's really no grounds for you to renegotiate. Now, it happens very often, but from the legal perspective, you can't walk away from a property just because you don't like the condition of the property unless it's a major issue. It is a legal binding contract, and if lawyers get involved, they can hold your feet to the fire. However, that's very rare that it gets to that point because usually this is between realtors and the buyer and the seller. And this is when a lot of people will go back and renegotiate and try and get a lower price in order to offset the condition of the shingles or the condition of the insulation in the attic or the wiring, etc. If there's going to be upgrades that need to be done, major upgrades, things like shingles on the roof, new windows, new furnace be installed, anything that is a big ticket item that's going to have a 15 to 25 year life cycle, what I suggest you do is you do it now during the buying process, even if you have to increase the purchase price in order to do so. This way it gives you a honeymoon period for when you own the property. It just reduces the amount of maintenance issues that you're going to have to take on. Then on day of closing, you're going to, this is a neat little trick, and this little trick alone can make you lots of money, it can save you lots of headaches and save you lots of money. Remove all of the appliances unless they're fixed. You're not going to be able to remove a built-in dishwasher, but the fridge, stove, washer, and dryer are perfect examples of appliances that you're going to ask for in the offer to purchase. And if you manage to negotiate that you keep those, the day of closing you take them out. During the rental process, you then rent the units without appliances. Two things happen here. When you rent the units without appliances and the tenants have to put their own appliances in, you now have no responsibility for the maintenance of their fridge and stove. And when a fridge breaks down, that's usually a $500 or $600 fix because you end up having to put in a new fridge. Stoves, same thing. It could be a $300, $400, $500. It's cheaper to replace these appliances now than it is to actually have them fixed. So by having the responsibility fall back on the tenant, that reduces your operating expenses, which can save you thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, a lot of people will come in and say, oh, well, there's no appliances. Well, no, I'm not renting it with appliances. Do you have appliances? No. Well, I do have a warehouse full of used appliances. I can sell you a couple of used appliances for here if you wish, and you sell them to them at a very reasonable cost. So $100 for the fridge, $100 for the stove. You just made a couple extra $100 cash. Plus, you've still downloaded the responsibility of those appliances onto the tenant. And that's the key, is they're now responsible for it. In lesson 4, we talked about the psychology of winning, and this is huge. This is truly, for myself and my wife Joanne, this is what has made us successful, is understanding that we needed to look at ourselves personally and change ourselves in order to achieve the goals that we wanted to set for ourselves. So we talked about, the whole focus here is talking about your why and your goals. So we started off talking about creating a vision, a 5-year vision, how to create this vision, went through the process of creating a vision board. And then we also talked about your why. What's your motivator? What's going to drive you? What's going to keep you going when the going gets tough? And if you're like me, and I think most people are, for many, many years, when I came up against some hardship, I would fall back into my comfort zone. And I don't like conflict, so I would fall back. I'd pull back instead of pushing through and persevering. Well, this is what I realized. If I needed to achieve the bigger goals in my life, I needed to push through. And I discovered my why, and I've shared with you an exercise, which is a really neat exercise. I highly recommend that you do this to help you discover your own personal why. So this why is, as I say, extremely important for you to get to know. Then we talked about setting your goals. We didn't spend a whole lot of time on goal setting because there's just so many different plans out there. It's very easy. But we talked about the SMART system, just making sure that you keep your goals very clear, precise, and measurable and accountable. That's the key. And then we wrap things up with a session on why you should have a mentor and or a coach. I just finished a live interview. Have not had the chance to upload that yet, but that will be on the site very, very shortly. And just to wrap things up here a little bit, I talked about the circle of success. And the circle of success or failure, because it doesn't matter, this circle will feed your success or your failure. So we all have thoughts, we all have ideas. And these thoughts and ideas create emotions and feelings. The emotions and feelings can excite us. They will cause and inspire us to take new actions. So we take new actions which produce new results. And these new results will then reinforce those new thoughts, which encourage us to have bigger thoughts, bigger dreams and goals. And it just keeps going around and around. So that's the circle of success. Unfortunately, for most of us, what has happened is self-doubt steps in. And the fear, the fear of failure, the fear of humiliation. And when these fears and self-doubt step in, we fail to take the actions and we fall back into our old comfort zone. And we get the same results we've always gotten in the past. Those same results are going to reinforce our original thoughts, and we're not going to move forward. We talked about our team and the people that you need to have on your team to help you achieve your goals. And the key point here is that all the members of your team, whether they be your realtor, your home inspector, your property managers, your lawyers, your accountants, everybody that you have on your team, you want them to be working with you and not for you. You want them to understand what your goals are so that they're helping you achieve your goals. It's not simply a job or a paycheck for those people. So you're looking for people with similar mindsets. And then in lesson 6, our final lesson was about the map. And with your map, this is going to help you avoid what I call the squirrel syndrome or the shiny object syndrome. And if you're an entrepreneur, I think most people actually suffer from this, and you're very easily distracted. So in order to help you stay focused, what I've done is created a massive action plan. So for example, here you are today. You've just created your goals and your dreams 5 years down the road. That's your vision. So you start off with all the best intentions. You're going straight for that goal and that dream. But then, as they say, life happens and all kinds of opportunities will show up. Now these opportunities can take you off course very, very easily. They're also called the shiny objects. So you've got all of these peaks and valleys. These opportunities, what you need to do here is ask yourself, are these opportunities getting me closer to or further away from my goal? If they're taking you away from your goal or your dream, then get back on focus and forget that opportunity. And then all of a sudden you find yourself going in another direction again. Well, bring yourself back. So keep asking yourself that one simple question. Is this getting me closer to or further away from my goal? All right, so now it's Q&A time. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to type your questions into the question box if you're on the call live. If you're watching this as a replay and none of your questions have been answered after you've watched the entire replay, then please feel free to send me questions at ken@5homestofreedom.com. Keep the questions relative to or related to lessons 1 through 6. Don't get ahead. Don't ask me other questions. We're trying to keep this focused on Module 1, Lessons 1 to 6. All right, so we'll open up for questions right now. All right, so just bear with me here for a second while I get these things. Okay, so everybody should be able to see me again. So what I'm going to do now is there is a question box. I'm not sure what it looks like on your end that you can type in questions. Now I see one has come in via my, just give me a second, via my phone actually. 2 have. So maybe the questions are going to come in on the phone, which is strange. All right. So here's a question from Ingrid. So sorry, I'm just going to get back here. So the question from Ingrid is, on your calculations in your module 1, it appears that you haven't added factors for vacancy, percentage, property management, or maintenance. Would these not all have an impact on cash flow and be considered in the overall calculation? Absolutely they would, and you're correct in that I didn't. For example purposes, keeping things simple, that's part of the reason why they weren't included. Another big part of the reason is that what we're doing here is we are focusing on managing these properties yourselves. Obviously, if you can't manage them yourselves because of distance, then you're going to have to take that into consideration. However, if you can invest in your own backyard, you can manage it yourself. The maintenance issue, normally in calculating the cash flow for properties, you set aside $100 or $500 a year, whatever the number is that you feel comfortable with. You set that money aside in the event that you have maintenance and repairs issues. What I'm suggesting with this program, I don't believe I've talked about it yet. I think it's going to come up a little bit later. So I'll just touch on it quickly here, is we're not going to set money aside because what we want to do is we want to maximize the cash flow, 100% of the cash flow. If we set money aside in the bank account for that rainy day, then if that rainy day never happens, then we've lost the use of that money. Or if that rainy day doesn't happen for a year, we could have used that money to help reduce the debt on some of the properties. So it's called the velocity of money. You want to get that money working for you as quickly and as often as possible. So that doesn't answer the question though, that if and when you have a maintenance issue, where does the money come from? What I would suggest you do is once you've got your first property under your belt, is invest in a line of credit with the bank. It doesn't have to be a huge line of credit. It can be as small as $2,000 or $3,000. This line of credit then is available to you if and when you need it, but you're not paying for it until you actually use it. When it comes time that you have to dip into it and use $1,500 to repaint the unit, well, you use your line of credit, paint the unit, get it occupied, get it renting again, and then you can focus on paying down that line of credit with your cash flow. Once your line of credit is paid off, then you go back to applying all of that money towards the debt. So you could go 5 years without any maintenance issues. I've got tenants that I've had for 15 years, and there's been very little maintenance issues. And those are the types of tenants you're wanting to attract. Yes, you can also have some vacancy. You can have units turning over. During your screening process, really attempt to get hold of a tenant who's going to be there for a long term. This is why, personally, I like the seniors. I'm going to say 55 plus, which I guess includes me now. But when you get that age group of people, they're not as likely to move around. Once they get into an apartment that they like and they're comfortable, they're going to be set there for life. And you're going to have very low maintenance. You'll have zero vacancy. And your management issues are going to be next to nothing as well, because they're happy there, they're problem free. So you're absolutely right that you should account for those expenses, especially if you're looking at more conventional investment properties. But for this model, I think you can greatly reduce those expenses and or eliminate them, and have your line of credit there as a backup for you. All right, so that was Ingrid's question. Just make sure I got all that. Okay, so another question coming. Oh, they're coming in here now. All right, so this is sort of interesting. Oh, it was a question from Jen to see if this is working. Yes, it's working, Jen. Okay. Question from Charmaine. Would you write an offer for a value below the listed price? So I'm getting a little bit confused here. So when I talk about this, I may talk about it more. I can't remember. Anyways, would I make an offer for less than the listed price? Oh, absolutely. It really depends on the market conditions, and the market conditions are fluid. So, and also the market conditions in my area can be very different than the market conditions in your area. So, for example, right now where I live and invest, we're in a slightly what we consider a buyer's market. It's not horrendous, and what that means is that there's more properties on the market, people wanting to sell, than there are buyers. So the buyers have a larger selection of properties. Now, the challenge then is that that's for the average property. What we're looking for is not the average property. What we're looking for is that raised ranch style house. And the student I mentioned earlier that just purchased a property, what they were looking at is a raised ranch. They've already missed one. They put an offer in on one a few weeks ago, and there was multiple offers because there's other people like themselves who recognize that's a good property for an investment property. They want to do the same thing. So now we've got within a buyer's market, we actually have a seller's market for a unique property. Those properties are very popular. Same thing with a good rental property. If you were to throw a triplex up, as long as it's priced well, it will sell very, very quickly. So it all depends on the situation. If you want that property and it makes sense, I have no problem offering full price. And in the case, with Drew and Susan just this past week, they actually went in at $5,000 above list price. So it all depends on the situation, but if there's a limited number of people looking for those properties, then absolutely you can go in below the listed price. Where or how far do you go? The average house sells for anywhere between 95 and 98% of the asking price in what they call a balanced market, so a regular market. So to go in with your initial offer around 90% of the value, that's a reasonable starting point. If you were to go in at 80 or 85%, the challenge going in so low is that you're going to insult the seller, and the seller is not going to want to sell to you no matter what you come back with, for a decent offer. The realtor is not going to take you serious as well, the selling realtor. So you have to be careful not to insult people. You want to be able to keep people happy and work with them. So hopefully that answers that question. That's the same one. Okay, so keep those questions coming in. Apparently they come into my phone. All right, in the meantime, I've got some other questions that came in earlier by email, and I wrote them out. So this is Dav from Victoria, BC, and he was saying that, I'm just summarizing here, there's no high ranch style properties that he's aware of in his marketplace. And that could be very true because there's different building styles across the country, and if there's no high ranch style in your market, then you'll have to look at the next best thing, and the next best thing is probably going to be bungalows. And the reason why the bungalow would be the next best thing is because of the size of the footprint of a bungalow. It creates more living space down below. The challenge with a bungalow is if it's an older bungalow, then the ceilings are going to be quite low. And the windows are going to be small, which means that you're going to have to cut through concrete in order to make the windows legal, make them large enough. And in order to make it meet current codes, if it's not already suited and you have to go through the suiting process with all of the permits, then by the time you're finished with all of the regulations, your ceiling height might be so low that it'll work for somebody like myself at 5'7", but anybody 6 feet or higher, it's not going to be very appealing for. It's not to say it can't happen though. So that would be my second choice, would be the bungalows. And there are a lot of bungalows out west in Alberta and BC that have already been suited. They may not be legal. You may just have to tweak them a little bit in order to make them legal or make them comply with today's rules. He also mentioned that in his particular town, Victoria, BC, it is a university town. Therefore, could a two-story work? The price point for a two-story is going to be $600,000. Well, the price point, again, is sort of relative to the rents, because in Victoria, I'm sure that a unit in a $350,000 house here, which would probably be $1,200 or $1,300, in Victoria is probably going to be $1,800 or $1,900. So the rents are usually relative to the purchase price as well. So that's not necessarily the main issue. The more important issue is the style. What is going to work best? So can you create a suited house with a two-story? Yes. It's just going to be much more difficult to find a house that is going to comply with that, for the separate entrance for the upstairs, downstairs. Then you're going to have to run plumbing upstairs if you're trying to create a separate unit upstairs. So there are ways of doing it. There's always a solution. That's the way I look at it. There's always a solution. And maybe in your particular case for the university, actually I have a student in Ottawa who is following the 5-home strategy, but he's not buying suited houses. What he's doing is he's buying houses and he's converting them into student rentals. So he'll put an extra kitchen in, and he'll have a couple extra bedrooms in the basement, and he'll make a 3-bedroom house into a 6 or 7-bedroom house, and he'll rent them out to students and make that property cash flow, use the equity or the cash flow profit to pay down the debt quickly. So it's the same concept, just a slightly different model. So I hope that answers your question, Dav. Just checking here, make sure we got no more questions. Okay. Brian has sent in a question of how to find a good realtor. Like, how do you go? What's the process of finding a good realtor? That's tough. I'll share a couple different ideas with you. When I was looking at, investing in a market that was not close to my home, so it was about at least a 6-hour drive away, and I had no contacts in that city. It was Sault Ste. Marie, actually. So what I was doing is I was going to drive up to Sault Ste. Marie. I was going to interview some realtors. I was going to interview some handymen because I went onto the website. At that time, I was just looking for rental properties. That was my goal. And it was very early on. So I identified that Sault Ste. Marie had a lot of really good rental properties. So now I had to start building my team. With respect to the realtor, what I did was I went through the MLS, identified realtors who had a lot of the listings that I was looking for. So then I approached those agents. So my theory or my belief at the time was that an agent who has lots of listings is a very active agent. And being in the game now and seeing what Joanna's doing, she's a very successful agent. She is one of the top 3 agents in our community. And all 3 agents have probably 90% of the listings in the town as well. So if you want to find one of the top agents, look for the agent with the most listings. Don't just focus on the one agent though, because in a neighboring town there's one agent that has a lot of listings, but she's an absolute piece of work to work with, and she doesn't have a great personality. So you approach these individuals, you arrange a time to meet them, sit down with them, explain to them what it is you're wanting to do, what your goals are. See how they react to you. See whether they give you the time of day. See whether they're willing to commit to you and work for you. But if they're willing to commit to you, then you have to be willing to commit to them as well and give them a chance. What you don't want to do is in a city the size of Edmonton, for example, where you have 1 million people, you could probably go with 2 or maybe 3 agents. You could go with one in the east, one in the west, and one in the north end. Without stepping on each other's toes. But you make sure that the other agents know that you have these agents working for you as well. So it's more about getting a good feeling for them, whether you like them or not, whether you feel you can trust them, and then how do you feel about their level of knowledge? What information are they sharing with you? Are they giving you details about the community? Do they know the prices? So once you feel comfortable, then you just give it a shot. Go with it and see how it works out. And if it doesn't work out, then you can move on to another agent. What I don't recommend you do is sign one of those contracts where you are then committed to that agent for an extended period of time. I understand the concept of them, and I don't mind signing one if it's to go look at a specific property or a specific neighborhood for a very short period of time. But I'm not going to commit to signing a document that ties me to another realtor for 3 months in a geographic area the size of the entire city of Edmonton. If we have a falling out, we don't like each other, it means I can't buy anything. If I do buy something, I have to pay that individual a commission. So don't sign those documents. So I hope that helps Brian. All right, Tim has a question here. Well, before I get to Tim's question, there's another one that came in via email. Charmin again. Okay, how would you convince the tenants to get their own appliances? They might go to rent another property which is coming with all of the appliances. Well, that's true. That's a fair question. But even if you can sell them the appliances for $50 and tell them that you'll bring them in and you'll put them in and or do a rent to own on the appliances, so long as they become responsible for them. You don't tell them that they're responsible for them. You actually tell them that they're your appliances. When you leave, if and when you decide to leave, you can take these appliances with you. Then they're yours. You'll never be able to buy these nice appliances anywhere else for less money. So actually sell them on the benefits of owning the appliances themselves. And the plus side to this is that they're going to take better care of them as well. They should take better care of them. The types of clients that we are attracting or attempting to attract into the 5 Homes program are going to be better quality tenants. They're paying higher rents. They should be cleaner and be more aware of taking care of their properties better. So, it's not the end of the world if you include the appliances. It's just that it's a really good way to reduce your operating expenses and the headaches, because The funny thing is, these appliances never break down on a Monday morning at 10 in the morning when you can call the appliance person or when you can send somebody over to deliver a new one. It's always on a Saturday evening or a Sunday when it's your time off and you can't get services as well. So there's the convenience factor, and then there's just the cost saving factor, which is huge. All right. Okay, no more questions there. That's good. Okay, so Tim had a question. It's to follow up with the appliances. I don't get why removing the appliances, why you would remove the appliances. It seems like a lot of work. Again, I mean, you don't have to remove the appliances. Simple as that. You don't have to. However, as an example, I mean, this comes from years of experience, and we owned a property that was it was a 2.5 hour drive away. So when there was issues with the property, we did have a management company, we did have an on-site handyman as well, but there were still times when we had to make a drive down to that property ourselves. And these were 54 townhouses, 2 and 3 bedroom townhouses that we owned. And none of them had appliances, no fridge, no stove, no washer and dryer. It was expected that if people wanted to rent these units, they had to supply their own fridges and stoves. That's the way we purchased the property as well. So we didn't even have any used appliances to sell them. They had to go out and get their own used appliances if they want them. The beautiful thing about this, though, was that we never received one call about the dryer not working, about the fridge dying. They just were not our headaches anymore. It was also no expense to us. The maintenance expense dropped considerably because of that. So when you think of the regular maintenance costs of running an apartment, I'm not talking about when a tenant leaves because there's turnover costs, just the regular maintenance costs. You could have, excuse me for a second here. You're going to have a situation where leaky taps, a toilet gets plugged. There's certain things that are going to happen that you can't really avoid. In that is also your appliances, which when the fridge breaks down, appliances are disposable these days. It's not like the old days where a fridge would go for 30 years and you fix the compressor or you fix a seal. Today, when a fridge dies, to send a serviceman over costs $100 just for them to go take a look at it. By the time they change out a compressor, you're close to $400, while a brand new fridge costs $500. So you're better off just to install a brand new fridge. You've got a happy tenant again. But why incur that expense at all if you can encourage the tenant to take on that responsibility? And again, that's not how you position this. You position it in the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Tenant, you supply your own appliances. That way you can get the size of appliances you want, the condition you want. You're not stuck with an old rental unit. However, if you can't afford new appliances or you have to go and buy some used ones, I do have some that will fit here, and I will sell them to you at a very reasonable cost. If you can't afford to pay me right now, you can give me installments of $25 a month for the next few months until you've got it paid off. I'm okay with that. The bottom line here is that you are downloading that expense onto the tenant, so the maintenance expense. And the likelihood of them taking those appliances when they leave are slim to none anyways. They'll probably just leave them, and you can do that whole process over again if they're worthwhile. And hopefully, I mean, if they stay there and they own the appliances, they're planning on staying there for a long time as well. Okay, so this question came in about, just checking here. This is a question that came in about upgrades. I mentioned that when you're buying the property, what you want to do is, if you're going to have to replace the roof, change the roof, or upgrade the roof, upgrade windows, upgrade the furnace, that's a common one. Try and do it during the time of acquisition, because then that can be rolled into the financing of the property. Now that doesn't include, obviously, if you're buying a single family house and you're converting it into a suited house. if you're going to have to invest $40,000 into it, you can't expect the seller to do that for you. Now, what you may be able to do, and you want to talk to your mortgage broker about this, is ask for a mortgage that will also pay for upgrades as well. And what they do is they will give you a mortgage based on the future value of that property, and they'll hold back the $40,000 that you plan to invest to create that suite. Once the suite is created and the lender then sees the value in the property, they'll then advance or release the funds to you to compensate for you. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing major renovations is to buy it conventionally. If you can get the furnace changed, if you can get some of the windows or some of those major capital costs changed during the purchase of it, like re-shingling the roof would be a perfect one as well. Have it re-shingled before you close on the property and have that negotiated into the purchase price. Once you own the property, then the best thing to do is to get a line of credit or a secondary source of lending and do the work. Your first mortgage that you put on it, you have to make sure the first mortgage you put in place is an open short-term mortgage, like a one-year mortgage. And that way you can pay the mortgage out early without any penalties, so that once you've got your renovations completed, if you buy the property for $300,000, you invest $40,000 into the property, you've now increased the property up to $370,000, the bank will finance based on that $370,000, so you'll be able to pull most of your money back out of that property, and you'll have much less money invested in that suited house. All right, that's all the questions I had that were emailed in. Let's check here again. Oh, got another one. So this is from Glynis. In Module 1, you discussed the new appraised value of a home after renos are made to generate instant equity. How do I determine which type of renos will affect the appraised value and by how much? I want to make sure I am doing the appropriate amount of renos to positively affect the appraised value to generate that instant equity. Well, first of all, the fewer renovations, the better, because renovations cost money. The renovations you want to focus on are going to be your kitchen and your bathrooms. If it gets involved with moving walls, you may want to take a close look at that and say, no, I don't need to move the walls. If you want to rip out an entire kitchen just because you want to change the cabinetry, maybe you should take a look at the cabinetry itself, and maybe you can just reface the cabinets. Or maybe, actually what's very popular in and around our area is we have an auto body shop who has become quite busy with people bringing their cabinet doors to them, and they sandblast them and they repaint them with a high quality finish. And when they reinstall these new doors with the new hardware, they look like brand new cabinets then. So little things like that can have a major impact on the value. To increase the value, to get that equity spread, it doesn't always work, but in an ideal world, what you want to do is you want to get that property for at least 5%, preferably 10% below the asking price if you can. Then you do your renovations and get your tenants into the property. That's when you then get it reappraised, because once you have tenants in it, they will look at that as an income property, and that will help increase the value of that property as well. So you buy it for $300,000, you're putting $60,000 down, and you're putting another $40,000 into it, so you've got $100,000 into this property. By the time you're finished, it's now worth $370,000, and the bank will go up to 80% of that $380,000. I'm going to have to get the calculator for this one. So $380,000 times 0.8. So you get $304,000 back through the form of a first mortgage, and you'd put in, well, you bought it for, you had to put what did I say, 300,000 down, so you had to put 60,000, you had to put 100,000 into it, so now you only have about $40,000 into it rather than $100,000 into it. So you can then take your $60,000 and move on and buy another property. So it's to look at the small features that are really appealing. Drew and Susan have agreed to allow us to follow them during this process of purchasing the property, so I thank them very much. Actually, Drew's on the call tonight, maybe Susan is as well. Hi, folks. So we're very fortunate. Timing is great that we're going to be able to follow this process over the next 2 or 3 months and watch them transition from a conventional single-family house, raised bungalow, into a suited. We'll see all the expenses. We'll see what they look at while they're doing this process. They just finished one last year as well. It was just the one anniversary, actually, a week or so ago of this property. And you know, they installed a brand new IKEA kitchen, which just, it's jaw-dropping when you see it. Yet the expense is no greater than going to some other kitchen manufacturer that you're going to pay 50% more. So being aware of how you're spending your dollars is critical. Spend as little as you can to get as big a bang as you can as well. There's also a lot of good used secondhand stores that you can get some materials from. You want to make sure though that you're not getting what appears to be and looks like used stuff and install it into a unit that's just been freshly rehabbed and expect to get top dollar for it as well, unless the market can bear that. So again, each situation is unique and different. Oops, sorry, close that. It's also interesting, it's important to get the right appraiser, and it sounds a little bit silly, but and it may or may not work for you. It depends on the markets. When an appraiser does an appraisal on a property, they always ask, what's the purpose of the appraisal? Who's it for? So if the appraisal is being done for the bank to confirm that the value of that property is there and it's equal to what you just paid for it, then you can count on that appraisal coming in at $5,000 or $10,000 at the very most, higher than what you actually paid for it. So if the house is listed at $350,000, you buy it for $340,000. But there's other comparables out there in the market that can justify a $370,000 price point. The appraiser is not going to come in at $370,000. They're not going to come in at $350,000. They're going to come in and say, yeah, it's worth $340,000, $342,000. They're going to be conservative. They're always going to be on the low end to protect their butts so that they don't get sued by the banks in the event of a foreclosure. So that's one way of looking at it. Now you hire that same appraiser and say, Mr. or Mrs. Appraiser, I want you to assess the value of my property for refinancing. I want to put a second mortgage on it. Therefore, I want the highest possible value that you can substantiate. In other words, I don't want you to lie. I just want you to give and use the highest comparables. So now all of a sudden, that same house could come in at a price point of $360,000, $365,000, maybe even $370,000. Yet it was on the market for only $350,000. So the appraisers have this leeway. They have this range that they can operate in. But you have to be able to, first of all, know how the game works, be able to express what it is you want from the appraiser, and have an appraiser open-minded enough to listen to you. I recently just refinanced a property to pull equity out to do something else. And in this particular case, I didn't know the appraiser. It was a new company. I couldn't get the one that I wanted to use. So I sent her an email. I said, here's what I would like. Here's what I want, why I want it. And actually, here's some properties in the area that I've just sold recently that I think would be good comparables for you. In the end, I believe it should come in around $140,000. And so I didn't tell her what to do. I suggested what to do. I made her job a little bit easier by giving her some of the comparables that I wanted her to use. And she came in at $135,000. I was very happy with that. I was looking for $130,000 or better. She came in at $135,000 because I suggested $139,000. I knew that she wouldn't come in at the $139,000, so she felt like she was winning a little bit as well. So that just gives you an idea as to how you can use the system if you know how the system works. That's the key. So I'll take one last look here at my emails to see if there's any other questions. No, and I'm just going to, sorry, I didn't mean to scare you by jumping up there. No, there's no questions there. All right, so I wasn't sure where or how the questions would come in, but it looks like the questions come in via my email on my phone, so that's good to know. So that's it for now. That's all the questions I have. I hope that was beneficial to people. Moving forward, next Monday night, we will host our next live webinar, and we will cover the content from, we will be covering the content in module number 2, which will be released. If it's not released right now, it will be released very shortly. Jen is just doing that for me. Between now and next Monday, I will be preparing the content for release on Monday night. However, I may not have it all ready to go for Monday night because I will be down in Toronto attending a seminar with Bob Proctor from Thursday till Sunday, returning on the Monday. So I will get as much of Module 3 completed and up for you on next Monday night, but it may just be a slight delay. It may be a couple days before I get all of Module 3 up. But we will definitely have our live Q&A and review on Monday night, same time next week. And until then, if you have any other questions, please feel free to email me, knowing that will be hard to answer over the weekend, but always willing to answer your questions and take the time out of my day to be of service to you. Sorry, one last quick look. No, that's it. No more questions. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night, and we'll talk next week.